We're diligent hand washers, mask wearers, and as a nurse, I make sure that everyone stays home sick. My husband and I even rent hotel rooms when either one of us are sick so we don't expose our child. We can and do limit exposure by doing the things science tells us to do to prevent the sharing of viruses, but with the recent measles outbreak, there's no reason, there's no way to plan for that besides vaccinating your child and yourself. When that outbreak started in Clark County, it created a new level of fear for our safety of our son, and we went on lockdown. Kite stayed home from school and in public places for fear that he would be exposed. And I just want to say this, every day my husband and I wake up and face the crippling fear that he may die from his cancer. And we have no choice in the gap of Kai's vaccinations, and every day poses a new risk. Someone with a runny nose, a stranger's cough, walking through Costco in Portland. And the last time I spoke to the Senate committee, someone in the rotunda suggested it was the reason I was the reason my son had cancer because I had him vaccinated. I was booed when I walked out of the hearing room because I asked to stop the philosophical and religious exemptions. And many of those people were angry, who were angry with me, had their children with them, like they are here today, and I don't have that luxury. And so the facts are is a 20 to 70% chance that immunocompromised kids will die from the measles. Upwards of 7 out of 10 kids die who are immunocompromised and contract the measles, and that's just not a risk I'm willing to take. So thank you for your time.
While Terry, Mark, and Amanda are coming forward, Angela Leyland, Alana Braun, and Jocelyn Warren, please know that you're on deck next.
Hi, my name is Terry Lunsford. I'm from Alsea, Oregon, and I did come a long way to get here. Thank you for the opportunity for letting me speak on the public record regarding HB 3063 and the subsequent amendments 18 and 49. I have 7 grandchildren, 5 months to 15 years. Some are vaccinated, some are partially vaccinated, and some are not vaccinated at all. Our opposition to this bill is not based on some conspiracy theory or just for the sake of protesting. My grandchildren didn't choose to be in this situation. It was not our desire to not get vaccinated to protect our children. If this bill passes, my 13-year-old grandson, who was born for football, will not be able to play, and his hopes for the future will be crushed. This may seem trivial to you, but is not to us. There is a risk, and this is truly discrimination. There is also a great financial impact on small schools and on families. So having to homeschool your kids may not be a financial win. This bill and the amendments tip the balance of power towards the hands of OHA bureaucrats and away from the hands of parents, guardians, and doctors. OHA bureaucrats don't even know my grandchildren or the details of their health history, the cultural and familial values of my home and community, or the day-to-day challenges we face, but the family doctor does. Forcing immunizations may be risky, and then expanding the power of OHA to include, quote, or any other disease that presents a threat to public health, unquote, constitutes an overreach of government. The bill and the -18 and 49 amendments creates the following under threat of force. It denies those families the choice to vaccinate by the right of access to a fair and free public education, the right to assemble in public places such as the Portland Zoo, and imposes a label on those children and their families akin to segregation and discrimination reminiscent of the Jim Crow era. Specifically, it classifies non-immunized people as second-class citizens who do not have the right as immunized people. It violates the federally protected right of freedom of religion by imposing a life-altering consequence for the worshipers and their children.
Okay, I'm Mark Thielman, superintendent from Alsea School District. Terry's one of our patrons. I heard a lot today, and I just wanted to summarize. There's issues and risks in life on both sides. But for me, as a school superintendent, the fiscal costs are already being felt in Alsea. We have a section of our community that's, very, very much populist-oriented. And I got to help pack up a young student's desk yesterday because they've already pulled their kid because they feel personally attacked by the threat of this immunization issue. For us, we're looking at, I did a little calculation, 9 students. We get roughly $8,000 in the SSF. It's $72,000 potential dollars that we're looking at losing, and we're already cutting. So those are real impacts. But the worst is, as superintendent in a small community, I get to say to some of Terry's grandchildren, you get to come to school. but I get to say to others, you don't get to come to school. This is asinine. And, you know, the day I ever thought that the OEA lobbyists would be up here saying online school's as good as public school, that tells you how just convoluted this whole thing is. Okay? It's not the same. So for me, I'm going to have a real problem and a real difficult ethical and moral quandary enforcing this if you force this on me. I'm here to serve students. I take all students, documented, undocumented, and the like. And I don't ask for their health records when they come through the door. I get to know them and say, hey, let's do a tour of our school. Come be part of our community. Okay? Now, all I'm going to say is, at the end of the day, it's up to you guys to look in the mirror and to think about what we can and can't control. This is America, and some things have to be allowed even if we don't agree with them. As a biology major, I already know. As scientists, I appreciate your testimony. You can't stop all things from happening unless you put everybody in bubble wrap. We would be safer. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Larkin, and I'm from Bend, Oregon, and thank you for hearing my testimony today. I'm here to oppose HB 3063. The idea that the government thinks that they have any place to mandate toxic injections into our children's bodies is scary. Vaccines have serious injuries, so much so that they have paid out over $4 billion of our tax dollars, because the pharmaceutical companies are liability-free on these vaccines, for injuries caused by their vaccines. In fact, fewer than 1% of vaccine adverse events are even reported. Former FDA Commissioner David A. Kessler has estimated that VAERS reports currently represent only a fraction of the serious adverse events. I also wanted to touch on the whooping cough that they mentioned. They did a study by Dr. David Witt, an infectious disease specialist at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in San Rafael, California. And they're seeing that vaccinated people are getting whooping cough more than unvaccinated. And it's being spread. They're having epidemic down in California with whooping cough, and it's with vaccinated, not unvaccinated. And another thing I would ask is that you please, while I hope that you vote against House Bill 3063, if that does not happen, please consider Senator Thatcher's amendments, specifically exempting private schools. Our kid is at the Waldorf School of Bend, and that school would be shut down if this passes. So we would really appreciate to have an option. I don't want my kid to go to online school, and it's a school I pay for, so if we're choosing to do that, that should at least be an option for people that are choosing not to have these things injected. And he's not going to be a guinea pig. I'm not going to wait to find out if he has some type of reaction to these vaccines that have already proven that they're not all safe. There's risks, and with risks comes choice. We should have the choice to choose. Let's see. Of the 30,000 under-vaccinated children in Oregon, out of a population of 4 million, if every single child was completely vaccinated under this bill, this would equate to a 0.7% increase in vaccine increase, having zero impact, not to mention Senate Bill 770.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Jocelyn are coming up. On deck, we'll have Callista Songstad, April Bassett, and Rhonda Morozowski.
Co-chairs and sorry. I just was going to. No, go ahead. Co-chairs and committee members. For the record, I am Dr. Alana Braun from OHSU, representing the Oregon Pediatric Society, the state chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Please accept this testimony in strong support of HB 3063A. It is our responsibility to band together to protect children and those who cannot protect themselves. Vaccines are safe, extremely well studied, and protect us and our children from diseases that devastated our country only a few short generations ago. In addition, vaccines are inexpensive, and they prevent serious illnesses that can be complicated, expensive, and cause lifelong medical disability. As a pediatrician, vaccines are one of the few things I recommend without hesitation. Vaccinations have made and continue to make our communities safer. As fewer people are vaccinated in our communities, they put at risk people who cannot be vaccinated. I am speaking here today on behalf of my patients. Immunocompromised children deserve to be able to go to school and not fear for their health and lives. During my training to become a pediatrician, I took care of a child that developed a rare long-term side effect from the measles called subacute sclerosing panencephalitis. That child developed the measles before he was able to be vaccinated in another country, and he eventually died from this complication. As we've become less familiar with these diseases, largely as a result of vaccinations, we have forgotten how lucky we are to have such amazing shields to protect us from these diseases. Prevention is key. We should not wait for there to be a larger epidemic before we decide to protect our children. Prevention keeps our communities safe, and it saves healthcare dollars that we can use to help those who need it most. With this bill, we can make Oregon safer and stronger. Thank you.
Co-chairs and committee members, please accept this testimony in strong support of House Bill 3063. For the record, my name is Dr. Angela Zalin, and I'm a pediatrician in the Eugene-Springfield area, and I'm here today representing the Oregon Pediatric Society, the local chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. But more importantly, I'm also a mother of 2 small children. My 7-month-old daughter, Riley, who's finally asleep, is here with me today. As an attending pediatrician and in my training, you've heard it several times already, but I have seen several children suffering from vaccine-preventable illnesses. Most of these children, in my case, were children who were too young to be vaccinated. An infant with pertussis, a child with measles, and another child with a devastating progressive neurologic disorder as a late effect of measles, as Alana alluded to as well. He got measles when he was only a year old. I've also taken care of children who could not be vaccinated for medical reasons, cancer, immunodeficiency, or after bone marrow transplants, who depended upon others to be vaccinated to be protected themselves. This bill would serve these patients in 2 ways: to allow for necessary medical exemption from vaccination, but also by increasing vaccination rates around them. In my opinion, vaccination is a social contract that serves to keep ourselves and our community healthy. Families that choose not to vaccinate are doing so with the peace of mind that their children will likely be fine because there has been a high enough vaccination rate to provide them with the comfort of herd immunity. But as fewer families vaccinate, we are losing this vital strategy to protect us all from disease. Imagine throwing a lit match into an Oregon forest in spring. Nothing would happen. The forest is wet enough from rain and moisture that fire is very unlikely. Imagine then throwing that same lit match into an Oregon fire or forest in fall or late summer when there's not enough moisture to protect it all. We know all too well what devastation and loss of life that would bring. As we have seen recently, we are now losing herd immunity due to inadequate vaccination rates in this state and around the country, and are starting. Sorry, thank you.
Excuse me. Co-chairs Byer and Nose and members of the subcommittee, I am Jocelyn Warren, Division Manager of Lane County Public Health and also mother of 2, and here to speak in strong support of House Bill 3063 and the -A18 amendment. I urge the subcommittee to recommend support of this measure with that amendment to the Full Ways and Means Committee. Public health was created as a response to infectious disease. Cholera, syphilis, for example, diseases that were prevalent, that were dangerous, and that were preventable. Preventing and controlling communicable disease remains at the heart of public health. We've had our share of outbreaks in Lane County. You will recall meningitis at the University of Oregon. In 2018, we battled a community-wide outbreak of pertussis, or whooping cough. Why? We are vulnerable. What we don't have in Lane County is herd immunity. Our vaccination rates are lower than they need to be to ensure community protection against a range of infectious diseases, including measles, but also many other vaccine-preventable diseases. In the pertussis outbreak, we had over 270 confirmed and suspect cases in Lane County. In 2017, we had fewer than 30. These outbreaks are costly for local government, for the health system, and also for people. Pertussis can be deadly. The misery of these diseases and these costs are preventable. But things are changing. Even diphtheria is making a comeback in the world. The World Health Organization has identified vaccine resistance as one of the top 10 threats to global health in 2019. House Bill 3063, by eliminating non-medical exemptions, will support our efforts to prevent infectious disease in Oregon. Public health continues to work to improve immunization rates. In 2017, this body appropriated $5 million for public health modernization, $3.9 million of which went to regional approaches to communicable disease prevention and control. In Lane County, we used funding to work with clinics and healthcare providers to improve vaccination rates among children and adults. Why did we choose to focus on vaccination? Public health modernization means working upstream on prevention and making the best use of limited resources. However, we can't do it alone.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay, while Callista, April, and Rhonda are coming up, on deck is going to be Emily Putterbaugh, Jill Johnson, and Ben Hoffman. Just to remind folks, we're going to try to go to a little bit before 10.
That's right.
And I'm doing the best I can to get people from far away up here, Mr. Chair. Welcome.
Co-chairs and members of the subcommittee, thank you for listening to me. My name is Callista Songstad. I live in Bend, Oregon. I'm the mother of 4 sons, 15, 14, 10, and 6. I work from our home. My husband fishes in Alaska 8 months of the year. I've probably spent the night away from my kids 10 days total in their whole lives. I know them better than anyone else on this planet. They are mostly vaccinated. I was the mom who, if it's set on the schedule to come at between 12 and 18 months, I was there on their first birthday as their birthday gift. Because I want to do everything by the book the way everybody told me to do it. Now I know how to cook gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, artificial color, flavor, you name it, it's on my list of things to cut out. My son has microscopic colitis. He's had an endoscopy and a colonoscopy at 7 years old at Dornbecker. He's been at Seattle Children's to be tested for fructose malabsorption. They couldn't even complete the test because his methane gas level was off the chart. They couldn't establish a baseline because he had SIBO. His gastrointestinal system was a mess. He did not have a solid stool till he was 8. He struggled in school, and nobody could give me answers. Nobody knew the answer. They said, go home and do your best, manage this with food. We don't see things like this. Colitis usually happens in women between 40 and 50 years old. We don't know why. We could treat it like Crohn's and shoot him up with steroids, but you'll be back in 3 months ready for something else. And so that's what I did. I've taken care of him every day. I've had the genetic testing done. He has the NPTHFR mutation. I don't know why that's not talked about and not covered in this. And if you guys impose your will on me, I will leave the state. And that will be my income and my husband's income alike. I do not consent to this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is April Bassett. Thank you for having me. I'm from Roseburg, Oregon. HB 3063 lays the groundwork for government overreach, and the cost of that is our freedom, okay? So we can talk about funding this, but honestly, our freedom as Americans is being usurped. If you have no freedom over your body and the choices you make for your family, what freedom do you have? We cannot control everything. We can't control the diseases that come and go. And we can't even say that all vaccinations prevent disease, because they don't. On many cases, they shed disease. But this is a choice we all are given to make. We can decide if we want vaccinations or not. And that's where it should leave. This bill is poorly written, as I can tell. Everyone's like, oh, this is a mistake, that's a mistake. Let's shove this bill away. Period. If you can't get it right, just don't do it at all, and let's figure something else out. But if vaccines don't cause things like autism, why has the federal government paid out millions in damages under the VAERS program? 60 years ago, autism was unknown, about 1 in 10,000. Today, African American males are diagnosed 1 in 48, and of the Caucasian young men and women, they're diagnosed 1 in 68. The more vaccinations, the higher number of children with learning disabilities. If parents were able to sue pharmaceutical companies for damages to their children, the companies would be bankrupt. Our Congress, to protect these companies, exempted them from lawsuits and established the federal program. It is very costly and difficult for parents to sue the federal government. Is the Oregon legislature going to establish a fund? Will the families be able to sue the medical professions for hiding the dangers of these vaccinations? Thank you.
Well, the next panel is coming up, Mr. Chair. On deck next will be, it looks like Emerson Party, Krisha Party, and Kristen Clark.
I go? Okay. Hello, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jill Johnson. I'm a public health nurse for Deschutes County Public Health Department. My role as a public health nurse is to prevent disease, to prolong life, and to promote health. And this is my passion. I care deeply about the health and safety of children. Our team investigates vaccine-preventable disease, and among the most heartbreaking is the pertussis cases, the whooping cough. It's most difficult for babies and infants, and about half of the babies that are diagnosed with pertussis end up being hospitalized. It's usually someone in the baby's circle that exposes them, an older sibling or another child in school or daycare. The cost for local public health to invest one case of pertussis and prevent further spread is about $2,200. And we had about 140 cases in Deschutes County over the past 10 years, and there have been more than 4,000 in the state overall in the last 10 years. Earlier this year, a child visited Central Oregon who developed a measles rash 3 days after visiting. Our team notified over 700 people that were in the locations that the child visited due to measles being contagious for 4 days prior to rash. We identified 16 children who were unvaccinated. We monitored them actively for the 21-day incubation period. As you can imagine, we had many very worried parents, and these were babies mostly that were too young to be vaccinated. Our staff spent 330 hours to do this investigation, which cost our local health department about $20,000. We're concerned about the schools in our region that have high exemption rates and the potential for outbreaks. Children should not have to suffer the effects of preventable disease when the current vaccine supply is the safest and most effective in U.S. history. Thank you.
Sorry. Co-chairs and committee members, please accept this testimony in strong support of HB 3063. I'm Dr. Emily Peterbaugh from Portland, representing the Oregon Pediatric Society, a state chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. As a pediatrician, I've cared for many children over the years. As a mother, several more. It is quite memorable to have a young patient who is struck ill by a vaccine-preventable illness. I've cared for many children with the flu, for instance. Many end up with secondary infections like pneumonia and ear infections, but I'll never forget a young boy of about 5 who got the flu and then died of meningitis. Like many other people that you've heard from, I also remember during residency taking care of a 2-month-old baby who was not yet old enough to be vaccinated when they were exposed to pertussis. She got whooping cough and was so sick that she spent more than a month in the ICU on heart-lung bypass machines. She bled into her intestines, her liver, her brain. I actually don't know if she survived, but if she did, it would not be an easy walk through life for her. There is no question that these are terrible things for children to have to suffer through, and it's also incredibly expensive to treat these diseases once kids are exposed. You may have seen the recent news report of a boy treated in Oregon for tetanus who had a prolonged ICU stay and ended up with almost $1 million in healthcare expenses. Who ends up paying that bill? Vaccines are an inexpensive, cost-saving preventative measure for patients, families, and systems. Vaccines are safe, vaccines are effective, and vaccines save lives. Please support this bill and make our schools a safe place for everyone to attend, including infants and those that are unable to be immunized for other reasons. Thank you.
Does she need to state anything for the record? Chairs Beyer, Nose, and members of the committee. My name is Benjamin Hoffman. I'm a pediatrician at OHSU Doernbecher, and I'm here on behalf of OHSU. As a pediatrician, I took an oath to protect the well-being of my patients and put their interests before my own. As a father, I would never do anything to place my children in harm's way. My wife, who's also a pediatrician, and I made certain that our kids were all immunized according to best practice guidelines, as we do with all children in our care. As Dr. Peterbaugh mentioned, I want to be very clear, unequivocal, and absolute that as a pediatrician, as a scientist, and a father, vaccines are safe, vaccines are effective, vaccines prevent children and communities from acquiring serious and preventable diseases. We can quote studies, we've got tons of data, we can talk about practice guidelines that come from unimpeachable sources. The only agenda that I have today is for kids. Talking about data, while it's necessary to convince you about how important this bill is completely insufficient to sway hearts and minds. I have stories. I have stories of kids dying from vaccine-preventable illnesses, real stories of real children who died from real infections that are preventable through immunization. Way too many to number. I spent the first 4 years of my career from 1996 to 2000 working on the Navajo Nation in New Mexico, where the population suffers from a predisposition to meningitis from a bacteria called pneumococcus. I performed countless spinal taps where pus would pour from the needle, where infected children turned from stable to critically ill in a matter of minutes. I saw too many kids die, too many kids become disabled as a result. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in our small hospital caring for these kids. The pediatricians who sit before you today do so in support of vaccines, and we speak of science, we speak of our experience, and we care about all children. There is no universe in which any of us would do anything to harm kids. Vaccines are safe, vaccines are effective, vaccines save lives. We owe it to our kids and to the common good.
Okay, Emerson, Krisha, and Kristen. Well, I can. No, we get way more than we. Welcome.
My name is Emerson Party, and I am from Medford. Hello, committee members. Do you know my middle name, the day I was born, what medical problems I had, short life of 7 years, my allergies to foods, my allergies to medications, what sports I am good at and will have taken away if this bill passes, what musical talents do I have? With all due respect, no, you do not know me. My mom and dad know me to my core and deserve the respect to make choices that are best for my life. Please say no to HB 3063. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was impressive. Go ahead.
Hello, committee members. My name is Keisha Party, and I'm also representing my 100 service-connected disabled Navy veteran husband, Jeff Party. I'm a retired respiratory therapist, and my husband has been a respiratory therapist for over 25 years and teaching for 12 years. Him and I are writing to let you know that we appreciate the process in which our democracy is established. We also appreciate the efforts that the committees are tasked with in working through these issues. With that being said, we have had some real concerns about how this process is being handled. Many bills are being fast-tracked and changed without a lot of people knowing what's going on. We have been diligently following many bills, HB 3063 being one of them, as it directly affects our family. These bills dramatically affect people in many ways, be it medical choices taken away, losses of jobs, uprooting families and businesses, and most importantly, potential injury and lack of accountability. There are injury funds and commercials out there for mesothelioma, bladder mesh, baby powder, etc., but nothing being said for the injuries or payouts for vaccines. Does it make sense to force people to have an invasive procedure done that has a $4 billion injury fund paid out and also requires injury codes for insurance purposes? This is about civil rights, human rights, and the constitutional rights that my husband fought for and are now being stripped away. Our children were taught the Pledge of Allegiance and how to fight for their rights. They know the true meaning of liberty and justice for all. I wish more people did. 2 of these children I speak of, my son and daughter, who are 18 and 19, will have their college education and tuition out of this state as well. This bill will force many people to move out of state, our family included. This poorly written bill will also ostracize children and families. Are we aiming to be in another era of discrimination? Are we trying to cause more divide and hate in this state, in this country? As my 7-year-old daughter stated, you do not know me. So how can you mandate something on someone and something you know nothing about? Medical choices and procedures are never a one-size-fits-all. That must be left up to the parents and the medical professionals. Where there is risk, there must be a choice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This is Kristen Clark, Klamath Falls, Oregon, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I want to thank Bill Post, who released a statement last week to all of you, and I want to quote him. We can all agree there are real emergencies facing this state, and House Bill 3063 is a distraction. I'm urging my colleagues to either adopt amendments from Senator Thatcher's office or drop their names from the bill. This is a simple issue. If we care about kids and emergencies, let's focus on the real ones. I've heard from thousands of Oregonians from all political parties. They hate this bill. And I agree. Senator Kim Thatcher's 29 amendments must be met if this is to pass. It's very costly and very necessary, but here's two of my favorites of her amendments. Prohibits requiring a vaccine as a condition for school or daycare attendance unless the FDA has evaluated the safety of the vaccine using a pivotal trial against control group that received a placebo. Second, requires Oregon to contract for a vaccinated versus non-vaccinated study to be performed by researchers independent of the pharmaceutical industry. I encourage you to kill this bill or accept her 29 amendments. Thank you very much.
I think in the interest of time, what we'll do is we'll call up two people that are in support of the bill and then two people finally who are opposed to the bill.
And then
okay?
we'll close the public hearing. We're out of time. We'll be out of time.
Okay, so I have two in favor. Looks like Dawn Nolt and Mark Helm. And then two opposed that we'll call up finally, Mr. Chair, before we recess. Gwendolyn, it looks like Tenna from Jackson County, and Abigail Eckhart, who indicates she's also from 100 miles away, but it maybe doesn't say where.
Welcome. Good morning, chairs and committee members. For the record, my name is Dr. Dawn Nolt. I'm a pediatric infectious disease physician. I'm representing OHSU and the Oregon Pediatric Society. I'm also the medical director in charge of outbreak control at Dornbecker Children's Hospital. I'm speaking in support of House Bill 3063. I'd like to share two stories in which I was involved in to sort of highlight the financial impact of low vaccine rates. A 7-day-old healthy baby girl was exposed to measles in the doctor's waiting room. The family was quarantined at home for 3 weeks. A large investigation was conducted at the facility to find and treat other patients who may have been exposed. This was a drain in time, financial resources on the clinic, as well as the families. The second story that I know that I will tell about is the one that made national and international news of an unvaccinated child in Oregon who was treated for tetanus. The treatment cost greater than $800,000 for a single case, while prevention with vaccinations is exponentially less costly. The lack of vaccines is eroding the health care of our children. We have seen the rise of measles in Clark County, Houston, Texas, Denver, Colorado, Iowa, Tennessee, and certainly the ongoing very large outbreak in New York. Medical experts, such as myself, are confident that vaccines are safe and protect our children. Vaccines are also financially prudent. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support.
Of the committee. Hi, my name is Mark Helm. I'm a pediatrician here in Salem, and I represent the Children's Health Alliance in Portland, Oregon, and Salem. House Bill 3063 has been cast as limiting freedom, but nothing here prevents individual families from making their own choices. Choices have consequences, though, and in this situation, because this is Ways and Means, we want to talk about some of those consequences. The choices that people are making to refuse vaccines are very often based on misinformation, but mostly on fear. It's difficult to convince people with data and objective science when they are distrustful of the entire situation. The debate here is basically about what is good public health and what is good public policy to do that would be protective for the children in our schools and that would be protective for the economic status of the state, because every one of these outbreaks that requires investigation requires costs that the state has to bear. The $800,000 case that was mentioned of an entirely preventable disease is an opportunity that we missed. We know that there are about 31,000 kids who are enrolled in Oregon schools who have exemptions, and about half of those kids have received no vaccinations at all. Most of those, if not all of them, are because of the personal belief exemption that Oregon created. Or personal belief exemptions is not something that every state has. There are many states who don't have an option for refusing vaccination. It was earlier stated that FERPA might be a concern, but that's not a concern in any of the other states that have done this sort of policy. So we should not be concerned that there would be some interference with state funding. If people choose to leave the state, if people choose to... I'm sorry.
You're up, Mr. Chair.
Hi, I'm Gwendolyn Terra from Jackson County. I live in Talent, Oregon. I'm Gwendolyn Terra. I'm from Jackson County. I live in Talent, Oregon. I first want to just take a moment to acknowledge that all of us are here for the well-being of our children. All of us. I wouldn't have driven 200 miles, stayed overnight, missed work so that I could be here if I didn't think this was really important. And I feel like we're all wanting the well-being of our children. And I know there are people who have children who have cancer, who are vulnerable, and we care about them. And there are children who have been harmed by vaccines and who choose not to put toxic chemicals in their body and in their children's bodies. And that's a choice. We have the right, as that young teenager said, who's just like my daughter, we should have the right to have consent of what goes in our bodies and what goes in our children's bodies. This book was printed in 2000. It has hundreds of studies saying that vaccines might not be safe. There's tons of information there. There's been tons of information for years. This is a complicated issue. It shouldn't be something that's shoved on children. And I will tell you, my daughter going to high school, getting an online education like she brought in isolation, not with other kids. Part of education is connection with other people, with kids, learning together. Telling her that she couldn't have an equal education because I don't want her to risk the poison and the reaction that she might get from a vaccination is not okay. The other thing is financially, right? Financially, this is going to cost a lot. Who's going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for this? The Oregon Health Authority, all the school districts that are going to lose money from students stepping out are going to have to enforce this. Thank you.
My name is Abigail. Can you hear me? My name is Abigail Eckhart. I'm a mom of 3 children, ages 4.5, 3.5, and 2. And I'm here because I want you to oppose HB 3063. I have a study that I sent to every member on this committee that shows that 44 vaccines were studied for contamination with heavy metals and non-biodegradable products. These are being injected into our children. These are the same manufacturers that are making our vaccines that we use here in the United States. That is not the only reason why I'm here. I'm here because I care about religious freedom, and I want to tell you why. This is my grandfather. He went to a segregated school in Miami, Arizona for Mexican Americans because he did not look white. He did not speak very well English. He left Arizona to raise his family in Los Angeles because he didn't want us to be raised around racial violence and segregation. My grandmother worked for the LAPD and the race riots broke out. So they fled California and went back to Arizona where we were raised. I just cannot believe that 2 generations later I am being forced to be in a position where my child is now not good enough for the public education system. And I think that that is a step backwards in our society. When we look back on those times, that is not a time that we look back and say, oh, that was a good idea. We segregated Mexican Americans from school. And I hope that we will not continue that process of segregating children who have different belief systems from schools. My grandfather fell into alcoholism. He fell into drug use. He was abusive. He beat my father. When my father was 19 years old, there was somebody from a radical Christian church who told him about Jesus. Changed our family's life. I did not have to grow up in a home where I saw my mother get beat by my father. I did not have to witness that, and that's why this book is important in my religious freedom.
We are out of time. I am going to close the public hearing, and colleagues, we are going to recess until 1 o'clock.
Yep, hearing room A.